So hey guys, this is actually Kang, and here is our amazing ESPN journalist, our League of Legends expert on every single region, Emily Rand, League of Emily.
No.
And in less than 24 hours, we're gonna have our first group stages match, and we're gonna just talk about it a little bit, our predictions, our hopes and our fears, and
the sinking feeling that's already invading the pits of our stomachs,
Yeah.
you know, when thinking about some of these.
some of those teams, yeah. But we'll get onto each teams quickly.
So I think a lot of the more like what people would consider off-meta picks or like wacky picks, I think we will see significantly less of those in main stage. But I also think that certain things that might not have worked out initially are going to be seen a lot more in main stage groups. So like I do think the Echo Jungle will come back, and I think we'll see a little bit more success with it. Because two things will have happened. Just teams in general will have had more practice time with it. And then also you're going to have like some junglers are a little bit higher caliber than some of the junglers that we saw in play-ins picking out those champions. So that's kind of my, like, it's not really a hot take. Like, I've said it elsewhere too, but that's my opinion on what we're going to see from the meta. I don't know if you had any thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think the meta overall is going to be quite similar to the regional finals that we saw in the various major regions, because it's going to be still quite early game aggression meta with a lot of skirmishes. I agree that one thing we might see is more mage picks, more off-meta picks, especially at the bot lane.
Yeah,
like,
I agree with that too,
I know that
actually.
Vega is pretty hard at the bot lane right now, Heimerdinger this. Syndra is obviously a hot pick right now. So.
Yeah, Syndra is going to be huge.
Yeah, so it would impact teams that have AD carries who can play the non-marksman champions very fluently, but we'll just get into it soon. So let's start with Group A.
Speaking of AD carries, do you think Viper is going to pull out the bot lane Syndra? Since you are the Griffin expert, I wanted you to talk about them.
The LCK expert. So it's quite interesting that Perks, who is like the non-marksman AD carry,
he's a mid lane.
yeah, still a bit of a mid laner, and Viper get drafted into the same group. Even though we've seen Viper pull out some crazy picks before, like he was the one who played the Teemo AD carry. He used to play Yasuo quite often, but now come to the summer split, we saw him playing a lot of marksman, but perhaps the change in meta will push him to play more like the non-marksman champions, because I don't think he was not playing them due to a lack of, proficiency. He was just like, the team collectively decided, okay, the team needs an AD carry in order to carry, but having Doran as an extra carry threat and having that meta shift might open up Viper to more creative picks.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in Group A, we have G2, Griffin, Hong Kong Attitude, and C9, Cloud9. So I guess I am actually really curious to see C9 because I haven't seen them in a while. I think the thing that people should know about them is that they really like to, with Niski on the team now, there's been even more of a mid lane focus and trying to get him ahead in really favorable matchups. They also typically tend to play a little bit more through having a stronger top side and mid, and then bot lane just kind of does their thing. But when you're thinking about C9, I definitely think it's mid jungle that you're looking at, and I'm actually really curious to see just because I haven't seen them in forever, and they've just been presumably scrimming since then. So I'm curious to see what they do, because typically when you're thinking of North American teams, they have been the ones that have traditionally been the North American team to go the furthest or do the best. So this year, now that Jensen is not on the team, I'm actually curious to see if that keeps up, I guess, because I think he was a huge part of some of their group stage success in the past.
Cloud9 is that team that made a miracle run at 2018. So World Split when no one else expected that. They defeated Genji, defeated defeated Africa Freaks. So now that they've kept almost the same roster, as well as Reapers continuing to be the head coach, do you think we'll see a similar unexpected run from Cloud9 because this is a very competitive group we see.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really going to depend on how good G2 come out and play and how good Griffin come out and play. With Hong Kong Attitude, I think we've really seen the extent of what they can do. They opt for like a slower scaling style that maybe people might be able to take advantage of with some early skirmishing, which we also did see happen in the group stage, right? Like they do tend to sit back, they do tend to rely on more scaling picks, and I think especially a team like G2, Griffin has the capability to do that. I've harped on Griffin's early game for what seems like over a year now, but they have the talent to be able to attack Hong Kong Attitude early, and then similarly with C9 through Spence Garen and Niski. So I think this is a really tough group for them. For me, it's going to come down to how well the other three teams are, right? I think G2 is going to make it out. They're still the favorite. I think they're just remarkably flexible. So even if they drop a game or two, they should be able to adjust in time. But C9 and Griffin are the wild cards for me. I don't know how you feel about Griffin's chances.
Agree with you, G2, that they are the leaders of the meta. They showed what a flexibility can and aggression can do in a meta, and it seemed that other regions are taking some inspiration from G2 after MSI. So now they're on the head and other teams are trying to catch up to that. Griffin is an interesting case. Many people will tell you that Griffin had a similar playstyle to G2, but it is not the case. Griffin is definitely the slowest playing team out of the three representatives that LCK is bringing. Even though, like other successful teams, Tarzan is the often the core, the pillar of their playstyle. He tends to be a bit slower, more meticulous, like would have been like a surgical knife compared to other celebrity junglers such as Kled and Yenkos. As you pointed out, it will be interesting if they can shift to slightly towards like a non-mage bot lane champs, and also if we see whether Doran plays, who is a bit more aggressive, has that more carry threat, or Sword plays, who has requested less resource from Tarzan, which means that more resource can be put on Chobi, who is very lane focused, and the bot lane, who we have seen can be consistent and have a career potential, especially during the later half of LCK Summer Split.
Yeah, I think they're going to be going with Doran, which tells me that they're really going to be trying to play through topside. And then they're going to, it will be interesting to see if they do put Viper on some of the mage picks, like you said, because I think he has the capability to play them. And that could make for some really interesting drafts, especially when Griffin go up against G2. With Doran, he's a stronger laner in my opinion, but he lacks the communication and just like Griffin, when we talked about them last year, even though they didn't make it to the World Championship, we had many conversations about them, and their greatest strength was that they had this like the 5-as-1 mentality, right, where no matter what the situation was, as long as they were making the decision together, they could win. And without Sword, that is lost a bit, and Doran does require a little bit more attention topside. So he does change Tarzan's pathing a bit. And that's, I guess, my slight worry about Griffin is because they can't rely on that really, really super strong communication that they had. Moving on, a group that's completely different with a lot of chaotic energy, let's just say, and a lot of really definitive play styles is Group B. So looking at this group, what is your opinion of it?
Many people touted Group B as the group of life after seeing the only major region team that is playing on their team is FunPlus Phoenix, which is the team that is heralded as the #1 team in LPL, which I actually do agree with. But that being said, I don't think that Gigabyte Marines or J Team should be like looked to. Should it be too disregarded? And then people can't expect Splice to come out of the group that bet safely. But it will definitely be FunPlus Phoenix being the very, very, very likely first seed coming out of that group, and it will like I said in a previous conversation, it will be a coin flip between the other 3 teams. If FunPlus Phoenix doesn't make it, that will be a hugest upset that we've seen in recent Worlds, because that team is very dominating right now.
Yeah, it would be. I think the thing to understand about FPX is that despite the fact that they have, again, like I use the phrase chaotic energy, and the main reason is because of their picks, but this team really revolves around Doinby. The playstyle that they have is something that we've seen from his teams in the past, and he has these really weird off-the-wall picks, specifically like tanky picks, or even if he's picking a mage, he's building like this weird tank build that no one else would build, and then he's affecting his side lanes, and he gives up several waves in mid to do so. But the credit that I want to give FPX is that within that style, they are peerless. They're the best team at playing that play style, and no draft is going to knock them away from playing that style. Like, you can try to ban the champions that you think they'll pick, and they'll just pick something else and play the style that they want. So it's going to be up to teams to disrupt that in game and try to counter it in game, because I really don't think you can attack them in draft, because their players have, again, like within that framework, they have a lot of flexibility. Now, you won't see them play another style but that, in my opinion. And if they do, it's not going to be as strong as their natural default play style, so that's really where you could kind of throw them for a loop. The other teams, I have no idea. I see a lot of teams taking single games off of each other. And again, FPX isn't like this incredibly strong, like dominating team on the Rift, I guess. Even in their regular season, there were so many games where I thought they were going to lose, and then they'd come back and win like mid to late. I do think that's where like a team like maybe Splice would have a disadvantage against FPX, because when we see them struggle, it's in that mid game, and that's where FPX can like crawl back advantages if they screw up their early game. Say Doinby gives up like 3 waves in mid and is levels behind. And then Marines, I don't know a ton about them, but I do think that they have, again, a really set play style that people are not used to playing against, right? So the few times we've seen FPX, it's really only Rift Rivals, I guess. We saw the Korean teams kind of, outside of one game, look at FPX and be like, we don't really know what you're doing, why you're doing this, and we can't really wrap our heads around it. I think that's going to be similar with GAM, and then Splice, as we saw from plans, their mid game is what needs work. I actually think they can have a really strong early game, and then it's their mid game transitions that are pretty rough sometimes, and that's where teams will be able to take advantage of them. J team, I just really want Fofo to do well. I'd like to see them play through mid. I'd like to see them play through him, and show the world why we've wanted to see him on an international stage. The rumors that they've been doing pretty well in scrims, which kind of surprises me, but again, scrims to stage is completely different. So, but yeah, I know you wanted to touch on Splice a bit. I do think it's embarrassing if FPX doesn't make it out. But it wouldn't be the most shocking thing to me as someone who's watched them all year.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
If FPX is coming down, who do you think is the one team that's going to topple down FPX?
Topple FPX? I think Marines could do it, actually. Just because whenever you see a team like FPX, you want something that's really going to disrupt their comfort zone, and again, not through picks, through play style, like through actual play on the Rift. Also, if Jake team could possibly take advantage of the fact that Doinby is going to give up minion waves in mid, he's going to leave lane a lot to affect the side lanes. He's basically a second jungler a lot of the time. You can take advantage of that by feeding your mid laner, and then if you have a good mid game transition, take advantage through skirmishes and team fights.
Okay. Speaking of we talked about the group of lives, supposedly, with one team going as a very, very heavy favorite coming out of groups, but a group that we have very little predictions, and in fact, no one dares to predict which 2 teams are going to come out of this group, and that is the Group C. And this is the most difficult group that I've seen in recent Worlds. It's SKT, RNG and Fnatic, all three teams have in common that they have made it to World Finals before. And they have all, those three teams have all shown very strong performance in their respective Summer Split finals. So this is going to be a very competitive team. And then I do need to talk about Clutch Gaming too, who this trio.
And Clutch is here as well.
But these trios were all youth at the play-in. So speaking of SKT, I think they have been most successful around the building triple carry threat lanes that many teams are just aspiring to at the moment. SKT had a bit of a I want to say disappointment. They became very close to winning MSI, but it was under people's expectation that they only finished at the semi-finals of the mid-season invitational. And after that, it does seem like SKT has tried to become more aggressive. And in a way, it has been very successful. And also, Effort has moved in compared to Mada. Effort is very good mechanically, and he has fit into the team really well. I almost wonder if that has also organized the shuffling hierarchy within SKT a bit, because they're moving better as a team than ever. But it is really good to see that, Kang can carry anytime. Faker could pull out his Azir or Akali and decides to completely disrupt the game, and Teddy always has been a very consistent high damage dealer. But there is no doubt that the playmaker of this team is Clid, who goes around the map super smart, super good about activating the laners early, and is fundamental in getting that early game snowballing rolling. And it'll be really interesting to see them go against RNG, who is a bit more bot lane focused, but I know you wanted to talk about RNG a lot, and
I have an RNG rant, and it's that they don't have to be bot lane focused. They actually, so for those who don't know him, Longshi or Long X, in the top lane, his name used to be Xiao. He came from Suning Gaming. He's an incredibly strong carry top laner. Xiaohu can be a remarkably strong mid laner. And I think the thing that always happens with RNG is that we see them give a lot of their resources bot lane, and that is their preferred play style, and then they forget that they can play this early game style. Like Karsa can be an incredibly strong early game jungler. Again, they're solo laners. If they get really strong matchups, especially, even if they don't, but if you give them a strong carry matchup, both Xiaohu and Longshi can carry on this team. So I think the thing that infuriates with me about RNG is that they have the flexibility to play a lot of different play styles, but their default is always going to be to focus around UCI. And in some games, I think that's really smart, and I think that's how they should play. And then in other games, I think they should try to swap it up. Going into this tournament, what I want to see from RNG is to, again, attack some of the early game mistakes that they make. And similar to how when we saw them at MSI last year, I don't know if you remember, but when they were in groups, they got beat by Team Liquid, and everyone was like, how could this happen? And I think it was Frost on cast who was just like, I know you guys were focusing on how bad TL was, but you didn't see the smoke that's pouring out of RNG the entire time, and it's that they really could easily be exploited in their early game. And so I hope one of the things that they are attacking in scrims is really taking a look at that. Maybe not putting Xiaohu on Karma. I know it became a meme because of their semifinals match, but put him on at least, if not a carry, something where you can put him in a side lane and he can split push. And they used to be this insane 1-3-1 team, and they still have that potential with Xiaohu and Xiaohu. And that's what I really want to see from them, because if there's one thing about RNG that I think people might misunderstand is that, yes, they can be this peerless bot lane 5v5 team, but they can also be remarkably strong and flexible. So that's my RNG rant.
It's actually really interesting that Group C is literally the battle of the AD carries, because we have Teddy, who is touted as the next great AD carry coming from LCK, and we also have Uzi, who is finally looking for that World Championship title again. And we have the Reckless, the star of EULCS, now LEC. But what's interesting about the Fnatic is even though Reckless is just like the name of the team almost, it's Reaper can just often be the carry of the team, and he often plays things like Gangplank to take that role from himself. And I have thoughts about Nemesis. Nemesis can be a very good supporting mid laner sometimes, and I really like the fact that he has flexed Twisted Fate even when it was not a meta, and which is a very global map activating champion, which can disrupt the top lane and the bot lane. And now it's in a meta, we might see that either play very frequently or even permanent ban.
I actually think it's interesting that they've put Nemesis on Twisted Fate only because Fnatic, especially in spring, but still, they have the tendency to split the map, so they'll focus on one side or the other, but not all three lanes at the same time. So you can see it this happen really frequently with Brox's pathing. And they've definitely defaulted slightly more towards topside with Guipo and getting him some really strong matchups and making sure that he's ahead so he can just like take over a game if need be. But Nemesis allows for them to have a mid laner who, like you said, is going to affect the side lanes. And it actually gives them more map presence. If, again, they're defaulting to splitting the map, it allows them to focus more on than like just one side of the map, I guess, ideally. And then we have Clutch Gaming.
So rather than getting into Clutch Gaming's playstyle, I also want to say that it's been an incredible run that they had. It's almost been like an anime story because they finished 9th place in the spring split.
Yeah.
And this was almost the same roster minus Cody Sun, and Cody Sun came in, and this team tried the playoffs, went all the way through the regional gauntlet from the bottom, and they started from the play-ins, come up, and now they're here. And it might also be a bit of a less of a pressure for them to be in a group C, because if they were in group B or group D, then more expectation will be on them to like deliver or even come out of groups. But now they're in group C, we just look with expectation. Hey, can Diamante Solo kill Baker? Can Cody Sun actually go head to head with Teddy? And because this team has been the underdog team that has always delivered, more than what people expected. I think the situation they're in right now, like being the complete underdogs against very powerful three teams, might actually benefit their performance.
Yeah, the thing that's impressed me the most about Clutch is actually their mentality. So even if they have like a really bad game where they make a ton of mistakes and it's just a terrible draft, like for example their first draft with the first pick Renekton and the Echo, I've harped on this elsewhere, but like that was kind of the blueprint for like what teams learned not to do in play-ins, and they recovered and learned. And I think there's something to be said for a team that in regional gauntlet refused to get reverse swept and refused to get swept and actually ended up reverse sweeping. They seem to have this like chaotic energy isn't the right word. It's not. It's a different kind of energy. Yeah, I don't know. Like they seem like oddly unflappable. They seem very upbeat for the most part. And that that goes a long way because, like you said, the pressure is completely off of them. Like no one expects them to make it out of this group. This is basically before they were even drawn into this group. People were looking at this and being like, wow, it's kind of awful that we have 3 of like the top 5 teams at this tournament possibly in one group. Like one of them is not going to make quarterfinals. And I think Clutch is in a really similar position to where C9 was at last year, where they were just like, well, we're going into a group with Gen.G and RNG, and we are probably going to get smacked, but it's whatever. And they ended up making it to semifinals. So another thing that Clutch has going for them is that when I mentioned C9 previously in their success, they came out of play-ins last year, right? And Clutch has had that time to get comfortable, be here, be scrimming teams, just like on stage, getting on stage experience in the meta. And even if it shifts a bit, I think they already have kind of hit a stride where they seem very comfortable with who they are. And you know, that confidence can go a long way because they don't have to deal with the pressure that the other 3 teams do.
Yeah, exactly. Do we need to cut?
We should start moving to Group D.
Oh yeah, we were going to. That was
just
it.
double checking that if we go to Group D.
Okay.
So it feels like we're on the pattern of like talking about like difficult group and the relatively easier group, difficult group, but this is the least predictable
the question
team,
mark group.
The big question mark group.
Question mark.
Is it an easy group? Is it a big group? But all the NA fans would have just taken a step back when they realized that Damwon Gaming is going against Team Liquid, and they already have IG in it. But it's really exciting. I really wanted to see the matchup between Damwon Gaming and Invictus Gaming. There were several things going on there. Number one, they have very similar playstyle where they work off the strength of the individual laners, especially top and mid lane. Because they share the coach. They have shared the coach.
Yeah.
Coach Kim has led Invictus Gaming, and when they went all the way to the 2018 World Championship, and now he has taken the lead of Invictus Game, the lead of Damwon Gaming. What am I doing with my words? They're very similar teams, okay?
I think the big thing, the main difference when looking at IG and Damwon is that IG. So I have no confidence in them. I have kind of a similar mindset with them where I feel like they could like win all their games and do super well or lose every single game. And whatever sets the tone on day one, I think is going to be really hard for them to course correct. So I think that if they do really well right off the bat, they're going to carry that momentum. And if they struggle in their first few games, they're going to continue to struggle, if that makes sense. Like, they're a very emotionally volatile team by their own admission. And the one difference I'd cite between Damwon and IG that I think is pretty important is that in qualifying to get here, it was actually a lot due to Jackie Love and his insane AD carry performances and bot lane performances because, I mean, the Shy is still insane. So, like, but Rookie has actually performed not as well as like what we'd expect from him ever since he returned from Korea. Like, he took a little break for a family issue, came back, and he just hasn't looked as good until their very last series in Gauntlet against TOP. And that is something that I'm looking out for, because if Rookie is on, then that team, my estimation of how well that team could do suddenly like skyrockets, because then they can play from all 3 lanes, especially since Jackie Love looks so much better and so much more comfortable this year than he did last year when he was like brand new. And then the other thing I want to bring up is that their jungler is brand new as well. So we're going to see, he's one of the top jungle prospects in LPL. His name used to be called Carl. Now he's Leon, and that's going to affect the team a lot as well.
I think 2 biggest difference that will come between Damwon Gaming and Invictus Gaming is, number one, I don't know which way the matchup between the Shy and Nuguri will swing, because they are very, like, you know, I carry or die kind of top laners. They'll both demand a lot of jungle attention, and they can also be a bit emotionally volatile, especially the Shy, and Nuguri is also new to an international stage. So if one top laner starts dominating the other top laner in that matchup, I think it might actually be a big enough swing to tilt the entire game. And that's my first thing. And the second thing is, I do think the bot lane of Invictus Gaming is much stronger than Damwon Gaming, even though Nuclear is a solid AD carry who can deal damage post 30 minutes when other players can create a situation for it. I have no doubt that Jackie Love is a much better AD carry, and if there is a complete like a lane domination from Jackie Love, and a lot of the jungle resource has to go to bot lane, then they might free up the Shy or Rookie to win that lane matchup because of the IG jungler putting more attention to them. So there might be another factor. Whether Nuclear can hold his beat, whether Nuclear and Beryl can hold their speed against Jackie Love and Bella.
Yeah.
That's what I was looking at.
Yeah, I think you have a slight mismatch where I actually think Beryl is a little bit better of an initiator. Outside of a few champions, like maybe Rakan. And then Jackie Love is significantly better than Nuclear in that matchup. So it is really interesting. Speaking of another team that is people accuse I guess of being bot lane focused, Team Liquid. I think this suddenly becomes a really difficult group for them. The presence of Damwon, just because Damwon is a strong enough team that they can beat any team in this group. Again, they themselves have said in interviews with you, with me, with literally everyone that being in the playing stage really helped them. They're a young team. It helped them get on their feet. It helped them focus. Even though they felt like they were only like 10% to then 30%, they're like, they know they're ramping up. And they are taking this as a learning experience from play-ins going into the group. So I think they're actually in a really strong position. IG are still like a giant question mark to me. Maybe I'm undervaluing them. I don't know. I've been yelled at for undervaluing IG last year and they won. But Team Liquid going up against these teams, I think they need to find a bit more flexibility as a team. If they're picking, say, a 1-3-1 comp, they do need to make sure that they are spreading the map instead of over grouping and over focusing and defaulting to that 5v5 style and like roaming as a group. I'm actually looking at Jensen to perform really well because, again, this is a player who previously with Cloud9 we saw perform really well internationally, and that was one of the difference makers for that team. So that's something I think people should also be looking at from this Team Liquid team, and also the reliability of Impact. I know it's actually really interesting talking to the Korean top laners because they all like think Impact is still like amazing. Like they speak with him. I know it's happened in a bunch of your interviews. They speak with him this like reverence, and apparently he still kind of like kicks their butts in solo queue. So I think that's another thing to look at, despite the fact that people look at this team and they're like, yes, you're playing through bot side, or you're relying on your bot lane to do specific things, and we're waiting for scaling, we're waiting for 5v5 team fighting. I think if TL is going to make it out of this group, it's going to be through focusing more on their solo lanes.
Yeah. And so Team Liquid has been known to play that, going to 1-3-1 mid game. Even though it does sound like a meme, it is also true that they do focus a lot of their damage on the bot lane, and they were allowed to do that because of that situation that is LCS. They wouldn't go.
That situation that is LCS. That's an amazing way of
individual
putting it.
laners,
Oh
like
my
their
God.
game plan wouldn't be challenged too much. But
Yeah, it wouldn't be challenged nearly as much as it will be internationally.
Yeah, like. Even when Impact decides to play a certain champion, it wouldn't go to unchallenged by any other top laner in LCS. Oh, there is a bee. Hello. So they can kind of wait. They can wait for their next objective spawn. They can decide to so we'll kind of safely farm and just protect the lanes until Doublelift can carry late game. But that is not going to happen against IG with the Shy fucking fomenting ulting you on Aatrox, even though Aatrox is nerfed. Goodbye, Aatrox.
You just lure IG into fighting you constantly, so they just keep losing, and then you can reverse your fortune. That should be TL's.
But that being said, Team Liquid is the team that took down IG at MSI, even though it seems to be an oversight from IG where they did not completely understand some of the pocket picks of Team Liquid. Well, Team Liquid studied IG to the ground. But I hope that IG will come into this matchup a bit more prepared and also knowing what they have to do in order to break down Team Liquid's game style, which is quite standard.
Yeah, I will say I don't think IG are coming into this and thinking, they're not coming into this overconfident, like they're I do think they will have prepared a little bit better. Whether they can execute that is a different story, because the story with IG is always like, they've said it themselves so many times since last year. If you fight us, we will fight you. Even if it's a disadvantageous situation for us, we're still going to try to fight you, because that's kind of their mentality, is like, we can always beat you in a fight. We're going to beat you with our mechanics. And that ends up being really detrimental for them sometimes. So like, even though I'm like half joking with like, oh, TL can just maybe try to force them to fight early when they are at an item disadvantage, or when the waves aren't in position or something like that, I do think that's a viable strategy against IG, because more often than not, you can lure them into those disadvantageous fights, and they will keep fighting, which means they'll just, that disadvantage will snowball for them.
It'll be really interesting to see which path Damwon Gaming takes, because even though they have been celebrated for the solo laners, Nuguri and Showmaker, I do believe that they play a much slower game compared to IG, even though they have been prone to skirmish, and it almost feels like they've been trying to figure out their playstyle still as they're heading through the play-in. So I am expecting to see which way the ball drops for Damwon Gaming. But we talked about all these teams, and we almost didn't mention AHQ.
So one of the, I'm not going to pretend that I know a ton about HQ, just like I'm not going to pretend that I know a ton about J-Team. But what I will say is that talking to a few people from the LMS, specifically Chai, who's the coach of Hong Kong Attitude, who we talked about in Group A, I think he said something really interesting, which was the LMS this year is slightly stronger because they don't have, like, Flash Wolves is good, and then the other two teams are like significantly below. So yeah, with JT number 1 and HQ number 2, the idea is that the talent level is spread a little bit more evenly through the LMS. And honestly, like, again, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend that I know a lot about HQ. But I do think of the teams in this group, they're the ones that were expecting, I guess, there's the least amount of expectations on them, right? Because they are the number 2 seed. It's not like, all of North America is looking at Team Liquid and they're like, you need to do well because, this is another chance for you to get out of groups and we don't want you to fail again. And then IG, former world champions, and Damwon, I don't think Damwon has a lot of pressure on them either, actually.
Which might actually help them, because there is a lot of expectation on SKT and also quite on Griffin, because there has been a lot of mythos built around them ever since like 2018 summer, when they did the royal road of almost defeating KT Rolster. But Damwon comes with the least expectation, and seeing because this is a very new team, it will benefit them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well,
we went through all the teams, but do you have any final takes on the group stages, or like what you expect to see, what you like to see? Any hot takes?
This is an unpopular opinion, but I'm actually really looking forward to watching Group B. I know that's like everyone's least favorite group, where they're just like, yo, PX is going to smash everyone, blah, blah, blah. Again, like I said when we were talking about that group, I think you have 4 teams with like very set play styles and very set weaknesses. So I'm really curious to see how teams study up on each other and see if they can exploit each other's weaknesses, because I think that kind of like watching teams puzzle stuff out like that is really interesting. And then, I'm still mad that we have Fnatic, SKT, and RNG, and one of them is not going to make semifinals.
And 3 of them have a decent chance at finals, and given that one of them has to knock them one of us on group stage, it is a disappointment as a league fan.
Yeah, I said semifinals, I meant quarterfinals, but yeah.
I guess my hot take is everyone knows I have a big thing for non-Moxen champions at the moment, and I think there's going to be a big divide of some teams actually really actively going for not even a cheese pick anymore, just mage picks.
Like Syndrabot. I don't think Syndrabot's a cheese pick.
But more disruptive picks for like the lanes or even echo jungle, and other teams trying to ban it out and reduce like unexpected variables, as we saw Clutch Gaming and Splice try to do at the elimination round of the play-in. So I think there's going to be 2 different ways of tackling the current meta, and I'm curious to see which approach becomes more successful. Do you at least want to guess which 2 regions are going to make it to finals?
Oh God, no. I think the teams I'm the most curious about actually are the teams that have the least amount of pressure on them. Like I'm really interested to see what Damwon does. I'm really interested, even though we like unintentionally dunked on them by the way we talked about their group. I'm really interested to see how Clutch approached their group. I'm really interested to see how a team like GAM approaches their group, because again, this is a very real chance for a Vietnamese team to make quarterfinals. Like they are. I mean, I think they have a very legitimate chance to make it out, and not like previous years where people are like, oh yeah, like they'll just upset a few and then they'll affect how the group ends up, but they won't make it out. Like I think they're going to be very disappointed with themselves if they don't make it out. I'll put it that way. I think their expectation is that they are making it out of groups this year.
I follow the LCK because even though I do watch other regions, LCK is my expert, and I follow them through Spring Split and Summer Split. And it was really interesting to watch Korean teams try to adapt to this new, more chaotic, more aggressive meta that they have been heavily criticized for lacking at 2018 Worlds. And it seems that we have 3 different degrees of aggression in the LCK representatives and 3 different ways of approaching it, because even though Damwon might have similar layers of aggression in SKT on the surface, their carry lines are completely different.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that LCK is sending like 3 different, very, very different representatives into Worlds, and I want to see how which of them develops and which of them becomes more successful.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for joining us. Yay! Special outro.
What the hell?
I'm sorry.
It's what I meant.
Special outro. Execute a special outro. It was a very special outro.
Special outro.
Special outro.